We're counting down the 20 weirdest facts about Thelma and Louise's 1966 Thunderbird, a car that went from showroom flop to immortal icon. From painstaking countrywide hunts for identical convertibles, to secret stunt modifications, practical effects wizardry, and a legacy that changed how Hollywood, and America, looked at women behind the wheel, this list uncovers the technical gambles and cultural consequences behind every detail. Which fact holds the biggest surprise? Let's begin with number 20. Thelma and Louise's ride wasn't chosen for speed or muscle. Ridley Scott wanted a car that looked like a faded American promise, a luxury convertible that had lost its luster long before the cameras rolled. The 1966 Thunderbird fit the bill perfectly. By the early 1990s, its formal lines and heavy chrome signaled respectability and, to many, a certain kind of femininity. This wasn't a Mustang or a Camaro. This was the car you bought when you thought you'd made it, only to find out the dream didn't deliver. Ford had dropped the convertible after 1966 because nobody wanted them. For the movie, the production mixed a custom turquoise paint, engineered to pop against the desert's red and gold, turning a showroom flop into a visual icon of rebellion. Finding 5 matching 1966 Thunderbird convertibles wasn't just a matter of checking local classifieds. Production designer Norris Spencer spent 3 months canvassing the country, tracking down cars that matched in color, trim, and condition. Each one cost between $3,500 and $5,000, a hefty sum in 1991 for vehicles that needed serious work. Mechanical restoration was non-negotiable. Years of neglect had left convertible tops stuck and transmissions unreliable, so the hero car underwent a complete drivetrain rebuild. The other 4, destined for stunts and destruction, got just enough attention to survive filming. Authenticity and continuity came at a real price, measured in both time and dollars. Under the hood, every Thunderbird on set packed the same 390 cubic inch V8, an engine built for luxury cruising, not wild stunt work. The hero car kept its original 3-speed automatic, but the demands of filming forced a creative workaround. For precise stunt driving, 2 of the 5 cars were converted to manual transmissions, even though Ford never offered that option for this model. Mechanics fabricated custom bell housings and adapted Mustang parts, wrestling with motor mounts that were never meant to fit. These hidden modifications let stunt drivers push the cars harder, all while keeping the appearance of a stock, mid-60s boulevard cruiser. Convertible tops became a hidden headache for the crew. To avoid mechanical failures and shave off extra weight, all stunt Thunderbirds lost their folding tops before cameras rolled. This decision meant every chase and desert sprint was filmed open to the elements, with wind roaring through the cabin. Once the cars hit 35 miles per hour, the microphones picked up nothing but gusts and engine drone. The fix happened months later, far from the highway. Susan Sarandon and Gina Davis re-recorded 60% of their driving dialogue in a sound studio, syncing their lines to footage of themselves battling the wind. What sounds like natural conversation on screen is actually the result of hours of invisible post-production work. Thunderbird fans might spot what looks like a high-performance police package under those movie cars, but the heavy-duty look was pure Hollywood trickery. The art department welded extra helper springs to the shock towers just for show, while the actual suspension remained stock. Oil coolers and transmission coolers, complete with braided lines, were bolted in place but never connected to anything. These props were designed to fool the camera during undercarriage shots, selling the illusion that Thelma and Louise's convertible was ready for a police pursuit. In reality, the car's real upgrades were hidden, while the visible hardware was all about cinematic bluff. Stunt coordinator Buddy Joe Hooker faced a challenge that never shows up on screen: keeping drivers alive during the film's most dangerous moments. The Thunderbird meant for the cliff jump was fitted with a full roll cage, adding 180 pounds of hidden steel welded into the car's frame and tucked beneath the original interior panels. This cage ran from the firewall to the trunk, protecting the driver in case of a rollover or hard landing. Other stunt cars received selective reinforcements, extra bracing only where impacts were likely, like behind the doors or under the floor. None of these safety measures were visible to the audience, but every weld and hidden bar made the stunts survivable, turning a showroom cruiser into a silent fortress. Inside the hero Thunderbird, the illusion of untouched 1966 luxury depended on details most viewers never noticed. The original turquoise vinyl seats had cracked and faded beyond saving, so an upholstery shop crafted new panels from modern vinyl, dyed to match the exact shade, and stitched in the same patterns as Ford's 60s design. The dashboard kept its vintage look, but the instrument cluster was swapped for a working unit because the old gauges no longer read true. Every surface was chosen to fool both camera and memory, blending new materials with period-correct textures to preserve the car's on-screen authenticity. 8 holes, each 3/8 of an inch wide, were drilled straight through the hero Thunderbird's body to mount cameras for those sweeping interior and exterior shots. Hostess mounts, heavy steel brackets, had to be welded to the frame rails for stability, while dashboard cameras demanded cuts straight through the firewall. After each setup, the crew plugged and painted over the scars, but high-resolution frames still reveal faint circles and mismatched paint where the repairs never quite blended in. These permanent wounds, invisible to most viewers, are the price paid for those flawless on-screen moments, proof that cinematic immersion leaves a real mark long after the credits roll. Original 1966 Thunderbirds stored their gas tanks in the trunk, a setup that terrified the stunt crew once high-speed crashes entered the script. To cut the risk of fire, mechanics ripped out the factory tank and installed a racing fuel cell behind the rear seat, packing the cavity with fire suppression foam. Braided steel fuel lines snaked through the cabin, chosen to withstand both heat and impact. Each stunt car carried just 3 gallons of fuel for action shots, enough for a take, but not enough to feed a blaze. This invisible safety gamble meant less risk for drivers, even as the audience never saw what was at stake. Thunderbird brakes were never designed for high-speed chases or repeated stunt stops. The original 1966 setup relied on 4-wheel drum brakes, a system notorious for fading under pressure. To keep the cars safe, mechanics swapped out the front drums for 1968 Ford disc brake assemblies, fabricating custom spindles to make them fit. Rear drums stayed in place, preserving the car's period-correct look for close-up shots. But this hybrid system created unpredictable brake bias, sometimes locking the rear wheels at the wrong moment. Crews spent days adjusting proportioning valves, fine-tuning the balance until the cars could stop reliably for each take. No one watching ever saw the difference, but every stunt depended on it. Dead Horse Point offered a dramatic backdrop, but the risk was too high for a real cliff jump. Instead, the crew built a quarter-scale canyon edge on a soundstage parking lot, an 8-foot ledge sculpted to match the real rock face. To create the illusion of the Thunderbird surging toward open air, a 40-foot crane arm was rigged to lift the car's front axle while the rear wheels stayed grounded. This setup let the camera capture that iconic moment of suspension, with every detail controlled for safety and cinematic effect. The entire illusion depended on precise rigging math and careful set construction, making a parking lot in California look like the edge of forever. What looked effortless on screen was the result of practical effects engineering that left nothing to chance. Test audiences sat in stunned silence as the Thunderbird plunged off the canyon edge in early cuts of Thelma and Louise. The full drop, filmed with a quarter-scale model, landed with a thud that felt final, too much for viewers who expected something more than simple tragedy. Ridley Scott watched the feedback pile up and made a call that would rewrite the film's ending. Instead of showing destruction, he froze the car mid-air, 1.4 seconds after launch. The chosen frame captured the Thunderbird suspended, front wheels hovering 6 inches above the rears, the car caught between flight and fall. That single editorial decision transformed the moment from doom to possibility, inviting the audience to linger in a space where freedom lasts forever. The illusion was built on timing, physics, and a willingness to let the story breathe in a moment that could never be repeated. One Thunderbird was sacrificed for the film's most dangerous moment. Mechanics pulled the engine to lighten the load, then packed 300 pounds of sandbags into the trunk to guarantee a nose-first dive. On the day of the stunt, a professional driver pushed the car to 45 miles per hour, then launched himself out the removed passenger door just 2 seconds before the edge. The ejection seat came straight from NASCAR's playbook, spring-loaded for instant escape. The empty Thunderbird soared 110 feet across open air before smashing into the canyon floor, breaking apart on impact. There was no second take. Every piece of the car was destroyed, leaving only high-speed footage and a pile of twisted metal. The risk, the physics, and the total loss of the car, all for a few seconds that would define the film's legacy. After filming wrapped, the most famous Thunderbird didn't head straight for a museum or collector's garage. MGM sold the hero car at a studio auction in 1992 for $6,500, barely enough to cover the restoration costs. The buyer kept their identity secret, and for 15 years the car vanished from public view. No car shows, no magazine features, just silence. When it finally resurfaced at a Mecum auction in 2007, collectors pored over the paperwork and found the scars left by camera mounts, 8 patched holes that matched production records. This physical evidence, along with studio documentation, confirmed its authenticity. The car hammered for $71,500, its value transformed not by horsepower, but by the legend it carried and the mystery of those missing years. Thunderbird owners in 1992 started noticing something strange. Prices for used convertibles began creeping up, and buyers who had never looked twice at a mid-60s Ford suddenly wanted one. Thelma Louise had turned a forgotten luxury car into a pop culture magnet. Auction houses and classic car dealers reported a wave of inquiries, many from women inspired by the film's image of freedom behind the wheel. Ford, having discontinued the convertible after 1966, found itself fielding questions about a model it hadn't built in decades. While no official sales records confirm a 30% spike, the collector market saw a clear jump in demand. The Thunderbird's value now came not from horsepower or chrome, but from its role as a symbol, proof that a single movie could rewrite the rules of desirability overnight. Before 1991, Hollywood's road movies rarely put women behind the wheel without a man calling the shots. Thelma and Louise broke that mold. For the first time, a major film made the car itself an aging Thunderbird convertible, a symbol of female agency and escape, not just a backdrop for male adventure. The impact rippled beyond the screen. Car ads that once showed women as passengers started featuring them as drivers, pitching independence instead of glamour. Automotive marketing teams began to see women as buyers with their own stories, not just accessories to someone else's journey. The Thunderbird's transformation from failed luxury to feminist icon wasn't just a plot twist, it changed who cars were for and what freedom looked like in the American imagination. Directors and special effects teams across Hollywood took notes when Thelma and Louise sent a Thunderbird flying over the edge, without digital trickery. The recipe was simple but revolutionary: a real car, a practical crane rig, and a perfectly timed freeze frame. This combination of full-scale mechanics and clever editing became a go-to template for scenes demanding impossible physics, especially when audiences needed to believe what they saw. Christopher Nolan, known for his devotion to practical effects, credited Thelma and Louise's ending as inspiration for Inception's ambiguous final shot. He pointed to the way Scott's team used physical rigs and in-camera effects, then let the moment hang in suspension, forcing viewers to fill in the rest. The film's approach, suggesting fate rather than spelling it out, reshaped action filmmaking. Instead of relying on computer graphics, directors started building real-world setups to capture that sense of weight and risk, trusting that analog craft could deliver a punch digital could only imitate. Desert heat pushed the Thunderbirds to their breaking point. On set, temperatures soared past 115 degrees, turning every day into a mechanical endurance test. The 390 V8 under the hood wasn't built for long, high-speed runs in that kind of weather. Automatic transmissions overheated so often that filming ground to a halt while crews waited for the fluid to cool and the gearboxes to cooperate. Some days, the cars stalled mid-scene, forcing actors to stay in character as the crew scrambled to revive the engines. These breakdowns left a mark on the footage itself. Watch closely, and you'll spot moments where the Thunderbird hesitates, or a shimmer of heat dances above the hood. What should have been a polished road movie became something raw and unpredictable. The pain of those failures, captured by accident, gave the film a layer of realism that no amount of planning could fake. The Thunderbird's struggle became Thelma and Louise's own, blurring the line between story and reality. In 2018, the hero Thunderbird from Thelma and Louise changed hands again, this time for an estimated $150,000. That number stands in sharp contrast to the $15,000 to $25,000 range for a standard 1966 convertible in similar shape. The price jump isn't about horsepower or even pristine restoration. It's about provenance. Every camera hole, every patched scar from filming, turns what was once a failed luxury car into a six-figure artifact. The film's cultural gravity gets measured in dollars here, 6 to 10 times the value of an ordinary T-Bird, all because it carried Thelma and Louise across the screen. Collectors pay for the story as much as the steel, chasing a piece of movie history that can't be duplicated. The premium is proof. What started as a showroom disappointment now outranks the rarest muscle cars, simply by being in the right place at the right cinematic moment. The final image of Thelma and Louise's Thunderbird hanging above the canyon wasn't left to chance or computer trickery. Creating that iconic freeze frame meant handing the film over to the hands of an optical printer operator, who would spend hours running the same strip of film through the machine, adjusting exposure by fractions each time. Instead of a single click, the process involved 12 separate passes, one for each layer of highlight, shadow, and motion blur. The operator dialed in more light for the undercarriage, less for the sun-bleached sky, then split the difference so the car's turquoise paint wouldn't disappear into either. The trick was to preserve just enough motion blur to suggest the car was still moving, even as the frame itself refused to budge. What looks like a simple pause is actually a balancing act. 12 rounds of analog alchemy that keep the moment alive. Digital tools can freeze an image in an instant, but they flatten it. This method let the story breathe, holding both the weight of the fall and the hope of flight in a single shimmering frame. Across all 20 entries, Thelma and Louise's 1966 Thunderbird proves that a car can be more than just a prop. It can become a cultural force. From the film's symbolic choice of a failed luxury convertible to the painstaking hunt for 5 matching cars and the shocking real-world destruction of a 110-foot cliff jump, each fact reveals layers of technical ingenuity and unplanned consequences. Patterns emerge. Nearly every modification, from fake police packages to hidden roll cages and brake swaps, balanced the demands of safety, illusion, and storytelling. What's most surprising is how mechanical flaws, overheating engines, and structural scars added accidental authenticity, while a single freeze frame, crafted by analog optical printing, became an image modern effects can't replicate. This ranking shows that what qualified each entry wasn't just technical trivia, but their role in transforming a marketing failure into an immortal icon. The Thunderbird's journey from showroom flop to feminist symbol illustrates how even the most unlikely object, when shaped by creative vision and risk, can change culture forever.